Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Leyva. Councilmember Greer.
Here.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Here.
Councilmember Hepperly.
Here.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Present.
Vice Mayor Hunt.
Here.
We have a quorum.
So Councilwoman Leyva is at a doctor's appointment, and the mayor is out of state at a meeting, so they're both excused. So welcome, everybody. Happy Thursday. Thank you for being here. This is our study session, so we don't take public comments during a study session, but we are very glad that you all are here. We have a lot on the agenda, a lot of really interesting information. Some of it will help us lead into budget time. Other of it is just some ongoing information to help us plan. So we are very glad you're here. So let's get started. Number 2A is our class and comp study, project results overview, and this is a discussion only item. And we have Terry Turan here who is our Human Resources Director. Terry?
Vice Mayor, Dr. Train is actually on vacation, but has spent her entire vacation on Zoom meetings with all of us at various times. So she actually has joined us on this, but I'm going to take the lead to do the introduction with our guests that we have here today. So today, I am really excited. We do have a number of items, but this is, number one on purpose. It is our people, the staff that we have, are absolutely vital to our success as a community. And so we, under the direction of the council, the mayor and council, this past year with our strategic plan of investing in our teams to make sure we have a high-performing team. A key component of that is compensation. And the town is at a point where we really need to make sure that we are being mindful of jurisdictions, not only in our immediate area, but around the state, and what that's doing when we try to recruit people and we don't get, positions filled. And then we have high turnover in certain areas of our organization. That has a huge cost on us and the public of constantly having to re-advertise, retrain, start all over again with our various positions. So this discussion is critically important for our future. It's a classification and compensation deep dive, and they are consultants, and we went through a competitive process. It's McGrath Consulting, and with us today is Milena Halvorsen-Mays. And she has been our partner in literally looking at every single position that we have in the organization, looking at our market comparators, and she's going to kind of walk us through all of that, explain what a class and comp study is, and then kind of where we stand or what to expect going forward with this. As you know, in our preliminary budget, we have a plug number of $5 million that, depending on what comes out of this study, we'll be able to hopefully address any of our compensation issues. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Mays and have her give the presentation.
Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And my name is Milena Halvorsen-Mays. I am a senior consultant with McGrath Human Resources Group, and I thank you for your time and attention. It's always nice to be able to come on site and meet with individuals face to face versus always virtually, because you gain a better understanding of the organization and what their needs are when I get to drive through the community and I get to see what programs and services look like at the community level. What I'm going to do here, I have a very brief presentation that I'm going to walk through with you and talk through what a comp and class system is, what that study does, and some of the preliminary findings that I have uncovered for you, because this really is one of a key project for you for some future planning for your employees. I want to kind of stage this conversation first about what really is a class and comp study what is a classification and compensation system, because you hear about that, but the reality is what really is it? And there's two main topics that come out of it. And first, we're going to talk about a compensation system, and that's a little bit different than a classification system. A compensation system is it's a system that is developed in as a model to compensate your employees, how you are going to pay them. The system that you develop is going to balance between what we call internal equity, internal comparability, and what is being paid in the market to make sure that your market or your wages are competitive with the communities that are around you, or even areas that you're competing with that may not necessarily be right next door, might be down in the valley, even upwards of an hour away. It assigns a monetary value to the position from minimum to maximum, okay? So when you see your salary ranges, that really is your compensation system, and then we're going to talk about how you develop that to make sure that that is aligned with the market so you're competitive. The other part of this, though, is what we call a classification system. And very simply put, a classification system is your job titles. And we put those into a hierarchical order. And normally it's going to be in a hierarchical level from the department. And then we not only look at each of those departments, but I look at the organization as a whole. And so if you have positions in we're just going to kind of throw one out here, an administrative support position, and you have them in multiple departments, then what I do is take a look at how are they similar or dissimilar, and if we have multiple levels, how are we going to identify what those levels and what those differences and responsibilities are in a methodical, objective, and measurable way. And so that's what the classifications do for you. Your classifications, sometimes what happens is it becomes a reward for your time and position, or longevity with the organization. So someone has been here for a long period of time, and well, we want to do something great for that individual, and so we're going to elevate them and put them into a higher pay grade because they deserve more money. Well, when your responsibilities might still be the same, then that causes some skewing within your overall system. And what we want to make sure is that your classification and your compensation system, the model that we develop, is going to be developed based on market data, based on position analysis, on objective, measurable, and defendable numbers and data, and then we have to set aside those other pieces of how long an employee has been there, and that becomes more the personal part, and we really just want to come back and focus on the system, if that makes sense. The other part of our study that we're working on here for you includes benefits. I'm going to touch on that very, very briefly before I'm done here this afternoon. All right. So also, before I start introducing some of the slides to you, I want to talk through very briefly about why it is that individuals or organizations are doing a compensation study, especially right here, right now. And there's real two common themes that we're seeing right now. And the first one is that within the public sector, there is less individuals who are applying and seeking employment with the public sector. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And when you get my final report, you're going to see that there's quite a listing of them. But I want to just kind of talk through some statistics with you here real quickly. Right now, there is an estimation of a decrease in applications for employment in the public sector nationwide by 56%. So there are absolutely fewer individuals who are seeking employment. And then on the other hand, on the other side of this, you've got about 30 to 40% of individuals who are currently working in the public sector. Oops. You have 30 to 40% of the individuals that are working in the public sector that are getting ready to retire. And so what's happening is that you've got people who are getting ready to leave, and you don't have enough people that are coming in. And that is a real true problem. You have some generational workforce changes that are happening. And the individuals that are coming into the workforce, there are things that mean more to them, that are more meaningful than, say, existing employees. And so we've got some generational issues that we have to work through in terms of how are we going to compensate our employees. So there's that challenge that municipal employers are facing all across the United States. But the other part of this that is becoming more challenging, which is why many more employers are doing compensation studies right now, is the labor market challenges. And so, post-COVID, we had a lot of individuals who left the workforce, and you now have an inflationary situation. And if your wages don't match the inflation, the employees are getting to be a little less tolerant than that. When you have a flat market, you might find that they don't change. But when they understand and know their value and worth, and they're not going to be paid that from their employer, all things equal, they're going to start looking elsewhere. And so that it becomes important for employers to make sure that their compensation system is sound for recruitment and it's also sound for retention. The tightened labor market reduces the number of individuals that is available for work. And what happens then is that the employers that are seeking out their labor market is looking for more and more experienced individuals because it takes time and money to train, and they may not have the resources to do that, so they want experienced individuals. So with that in mind, what I would like to do is just, I want to share with you your town demographics. This is your employees, and we're going to focus on the two left-hand graphs. And what I've done is I've outlined all of your employees by age group. And on the top here, you will see the percentage of employees in each of those age bands. And then below that is, again, the age band of your employees and how long they've been with the organization. Okay, so overall, your employees have been with the organization on average for 6.7 years, and the national average is 6.9 years, which means you're right at average, and that's a good thing. We're seeing that number is declining. People are leaving the public sector very, very quickly. Now, here is some items for you to consider. When you look at the individuals who are age 60 and over, right now that is making up approximately 19% of your workforce. Those individuals are going to get ready to retire. They've earned that right to do so, and we're going to congratulate them when they decide to go. And that means 1 out of 5 people that are currently working in your organization, they're getting ready to leave. And what the town is going to need to do is prepare for future recruitments, because they're going to have to fill those positions again. So that's not a drastic number. 20% or 19% of your workforce it's a good number, but just know that that will happen. And when you look at their service level in the bottom box, they actually have quite a bit of tenure. And what's going to happen when they leave, your average tenure is going to start to decline. So now pay attention to the far left-hand side when you're looking at those individuals who are under the age of 40. And right now that makes up about 38% of your workforce. I call them your very mobile employees. They are not afraid to go work elsewhere. And the concept of I'm going to get in with an organization, I'm going to stay for 20 or 25 years, that's gone. Individuals, they don't normally stay for more than a few years. And this is the group of individuals that they are not as tolerant of maybe flat salaries. They understand their value. And when you look at their years of service in the bottom, you'll see that it ranges from about 2 years to just under 5. Those are the individuals that you want to try to hold on to. So not only does the town of Prescott Valley have to worry about recruitment, and we have to develop a system that's going to support recruitment for you, we also want you to pay attention to the retention of your current personnel as well. And then you have also in the middle, you've got about 44% of your workforce is what I call the sweet spot. These are individuals who probably have been in their industry for a number of years, and they would be considered subject matter experts, and that is the experience that everyone wants. And I call that poaching, because that's exactly what they're doing. You have employers who are plucking those employees out because they have the experience that they want, and you also have to be worried about the retention for that group of individuals, because that's this is all your future succession. You talk about needing to have, foundation, and this really is the foundation of your organization. Even though it's internal infrastructure, it's infrastructure nonetheless. The other part, the big graph that you see in front of you, is all of your employees and their tenure. And what I found is that 34% of your employees have been here for about 2 years, which means the town has actually been actively recruiting a lot. You don't have tenure, and you're going to want to make sure that you have the tools in place, and this is an HR topic, make sure that you have the tools in place for future professional growth and development, growing your individuals, let them develop up in the organization because they certainly are the future of your community. Okay. Now let's talk about the comps. Let's talk about the compensation study and what we do. When we go out to the market, when we first come into an organization, we meet with all of the departments, we meet with your administration, gain an understanding of the operations, programs, and services that are provided, and that helps us then understand what do we need to do out in the market when we collect that data. And one of the things that we did when we met with your administration and your department directors was talk about who are you comparable to? Who are you losing your human capital to? Who are you looking to try to gain your human capital from? And we got quite a comprehensive look within the Valley and also in this particular area as well. So after additional discussions, we settled on these comparable organizations mutually between McGrath and your town administration. And what you'll see here is that we put them into a couple of tiers. Now, that's not going to mean a whole lot for you. It was more for me for the data process. But you will see then we are looking at your local community. We are also looking, we've got the DPS, which is putting quite a bit of stress on the public safety salaries. The town of Marana, that is a smaller community, but it is growing and very characteristically similar to Prescott Valley. And then we also identified individual communities within the Valley because there are going to be some times when the influences of the Valley have an impact on your wages here. So we identified that there were just a handful of them just so that we can understand what's going to happen with your wages in comparisons to what's happening an hour south of you. All right, before I flip the screen here, because I'm going to show you a couple of charts that show the market findings and how you are looking now in comparisons to these other organizations, let me explain to you what you're going to see. When we run a data analysis, we collect 4 data points for each of the benchmark positions. We collect minimum, midpoint, and maximum. And what that does then is it gives us an understanding of the salary ranges. When we go back to that compensation system, what are those ranges? But then we also ask for incumbent data. So what are actual employees earning to compare against the salaries of your actual employees? And this is very important because you might have a salary range, but you may not be compensated from it. And that happens when you have some stressors in the market and you've got some positions that are very difficult to fill, and suddenly organizations are saying, whatever it is that we've got to do to get a person into that position is what we have to pay. And that becomes more of an indicator of what is actually happening in the market. So we need to know what's happening with the ranges, and we need to know what's happening with the incumbents. Now, when we do that comparison, then we put this into what's called a comp ratio. It's a comparison ratio between the town of Prescott Valley against all of that analyzed data that I had from all of these different communities. And the number that you want to see on the screen is 50. Anything 50 and above is a good number. It's going to be in blue. Anything that is in pink is what we call at risk. It is likely going to be market competitive depending upon the industry, but given the labor market that you are in right now, we like to see your numbers closer to 50. And then anything that is red is an indication that you're too far under the market to be market competitive. Compensation philosophy, compensation methodology will give you a plus minus 10% off of that 50% comp ratio. I'm sliding. Right now in the market, we're sliding it up to 45%. So let's take a peek at how you look. If you focus on the 2 far left-hand graphs, please, that is the town of Prescott Valley's minimums off of your current salary ranges and your midpoints. For the purposes of this conversation, we don't really need to talk about the maximums. But here's what we found. Overall, your trend is the same, no matter if we're looking at the minimum, the midpoint, or the maximum, which tells us that your ranges in general really just are not aligning with the market. So overall, what you will find between the minimum and the midpoint is that you've got about 6 to 7% of your positions that are at a 50% comp ratio or greater, which is what we want to see. Those are the little blue boxes. The pink box, that is your at-risk category with a 45% comp ratio, and that is ranging between 9% and 12%. And the rest of your positions just are too far under. So that tells me very simply that your salary ranges are no longer market competitive. And the challenge that you have is, number one, you have over 50 pay grades, which is absolutely too many for an organization your size. So they're probably, I could tell you that it sometimes doesn't make any sense why you've got certain positions and certain pay grades, and we will get that fixed for you. But the other thing that's happening is that your salary ranges are very broad. They're from minimum to maximum. And one questions then, do you know what your market is? And at this time, I would say that your organization is doing its research on a case-by-case basis to try to bring individuals in at a market point and not really paying attention to what the salary ranges are. So you've got a tool that is not useful for you right now. And that means that we've got to update your entire model, okay? All right, so the takeaway on that, other than you need a new compensation system, is that we also are looking at your classifications. There is some question about how positions got to where it is they are right now. And the other thing that is important is that we will be providing you with policy recommendations. In order to manage and run a compensation system, you need to, and I'm going to say this maybe even a couple of more times, there needs to be objective, measurable, defendable parameters that are used when you are utilizing and managing this system. And so I'm going to be giving you some policy guidelines for the Human Resources Department to manage this system going forward, and that's going to help you keep this aligned going forward. All right. The last thing I want to just share with you, and then if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, is taking a little bit of a step back, because what I'm talking to you about, or what I just talked to you about, is compensation. But the other thing that we were asked to take a look at here is your benefits. But when you look at compensation and benefits, that is not necessarily the total picture. And what I am showing you on the screen here is what we would consider to be the total picture. And we call this total rewards. Employee experiences is more than just wages and benefits. And if you take a look at the circle right in the middle, it says total reward strategy with compensation and benefits. That also then, the entire employee experience also is your performance and your recognition. It is your work-life balance. It is, your personal well-being, and it's the development and career opportunities that an organization gives you. And so when we look at the entire employee experience, it's those 5 core items. But that in of itself, it really has some outside influences, and those outside influences is your organizational culture. And your organizational culture here, and it was immediately known and just understood when I had meetings with individuals. You are an organization that has a high expectation of excellence and high performance. And that has a lot to do with the leadership of your organization. And so for that, then we have to make sure that the expectations of your organization are matched when we are looking at your compensation and your benefit structure. Because if you want the best to come work for you, we need to make sure that you are competitively paid. But there's other things that are also influencing this, and that is your business strategy, which that is your mission. It is your vision. It is your strategic plan that you have, and making sure that departments know, what am I working toward for the community, and what, as an employee, what is my role in that, so that I have an understanding of the value that I give to the organization. And then the other piece is the HR strategy, and that HR strategy talks about your being able to attract and motivate and retain and engage your employee workforce. And what are we doing with that? Well, what we're going to be doing with that is developing, number one, an updated compensation system for you, comp and class system, that is going to be more aligned with the Tier 1 and the Tier 2 that we found. And we will ensure that you have really strong minimums or entrance wages, because we know you're going to have to recruit, and we're going to make sure that you have a good range because we want you to be able to retain. So that will be the beginning of this, but just know it, we know that it's not the whole picture. If you were to say, people don't leave just for money, you're absolutely right. I can't argue that. I'm hoping that because you do have a high performing organization, and if we can give you some solid wages and benefit recommendations, that the rest is going to help fall in place because you are an organization that people want to come work for because of the work that you do and what you are, what you're providing to your community. So with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any questions, council? So, have a lot of good information, a lot of good experience, and I have a question. I don't know if it's for you, but I appreciate what you're saying and exactly the information that you covered, particularly on the last slide, the total rewards as part of our strategic plan or focus area that's on this staff report right here where it says high performing team and defines that. But my question specifically is, how often do cities and towns or counties do this kind of comp and class study?
It's a great question. And you're doing what I call an overhaul. We're starting you from the foundation and we're rebuilding you. And so in future years, this should be a much easier process to go through. Our recommendation is every 3 to 5 years, depending upon the market. If you were in central Kansas, I would say 5 years because the market isn't changing nearly like what you are experiencing here, and you have a lot of variables that are pushing you right now within your labor market. So because you are in what I would call a very aggressive market, you will be recommended at 3 years, and that will be in the final report. It will not be to this level, but we want you to make sure that you are every 3 years. If there's a blip in the market, if you're struggling with engineers, as an example, well, it is possible that something has happened with the engineers market. And if you can capture it once every few years, perhaps you aren't losing your personnel, you're able to retain them. And then those impacts, financial impacts, should not be as significant.
Right, so probably about every 3 to 5 years, but Gilbert, how often have we done something like this in Prescott Valley?
Vice Mayor, members of the council, I'm not aware of certainly a deep dive to this level. I think that the organization had been just internally, calling and looking at where we compare to some of our, nearby jurisdictions. But we're in a sense, as Melina explained, really building a whole foundation and a system that we can grow well into the future.
And that could be why we have so much red,
It could be.
so little blue.
Yeah, yes. And I don't know historically. I don't know, right? And I could speculate, although I say, well, now we know, and we have to build you a brand new model.
So now is that great amount of red and little blue something that we should be concerned about? Have you seen that before? Is it something to overcome?
You will absolutely overcome this.
Good.
You will absolutely overcome it. I have no doubt. And, we have organizations that we've worked with for 12, 15 years, and they say, hey, come back and see us, just to kind of make sure that we're staying fresh and with the market. And in future years, you're not going to look as kiltered as you do now. And so if you adhere to the recommendations that I'm giving, because I'm not only going to give you the tool, but I'm also going to be giving you policy recommendations to manage this going forward. And if you do that and you are objectively looking at positions as they change, as they are new and they get placed into the new model, and we are not going to, we're not going to go down the road of, I know this person and we're going to make decisions based on people. We're going to focus it on the system and what the system is needed. That is absolutely going to be good for the organization for the years to come. And you're not the worst that I've seen by any stretch. You're
Good, and
not.
I noticed under fiscal analysis, we tentatively budgeted, because this is kind of going in right during our budget. We
Yes.
tentatively budgeted $5 million as a placeholder.
Yes.
And I was pleasantly surprised when you said, we're not going to need that much. Because, and Katie even told us when we were at our study session last week, that whatever extra we can either put in reserves or put in non-department and.
Yes.
And look at. So that was really good. So unless there's any other questions, we thank you very much for
Vice Mayor.
being here.
Could I just add real quick, and I think it's really important. First, I want to thank you and your whole organization for the work that you're doing. It's a heavy lift. It's mind-numbing when you get into all of the individual mechanics and the data points. But I also want to thank our HR team. They're here today and with Dr. Train online. They're all going through this process and learning and being a part of
Yeah.
it. And I really appreciate the work that they're doing and the work that Dr. Train is doing. A couple other things that I think we will gain out of this process is we are going to be looking at job titles, which means
We
a
are.
lot to me.
Yes.
So when we talk about being a high-performing team, I personally hate titles that have worker or labor, things that I want to make sure that every member of our team is a key part of this organization and is valued in everything that we do. So we are going to be making those
We are.
adjustments, and I'm really excited about that. And then a companion piece to this is, as you know, when we presented to the council of moving away from the traditional annual evaluation process, we will be also introducing a high performance award program. So there'll be, a quantifiable or a very objective criteria that department heads can nominate high performers that go well above and beyond. And that will be a piece of this, is to make sure that we again recognize exceptional work throughout the organization. And it's not only individuals, but teams will be included in that. So if we have a team of individuals that are cross-departmental, they could also achieve a high performance award and receive some additional one-time bonus dollars.
Excellent. And I know that worked when we were implementing projects during our strategic planning. There was a lot of cross-department teams, and so that'll be very exciting. And I did pick up that you said that we had 50-plus titles, and for our size of jurisdiction, that was a lot. So you're going to be making recommendations on reducing that number, and then, like Gilbert said, more positive title.
Right. What you have is more than 50 pay grades, which means salary ranges. And as an example, I'm working with an organization that has 1,200 employees. They have about 300 job titles, and we have that down to about 30 pay grades or 30 salary ranges. So you have too many salary ranges. We need less. The job titles, I don't even have a final number on that yet, but we certainly are evaluating every position, make sure that they have the proper job title or classification. And yes, we are adjusting that to make sure that it is more inclusive and equitable to the organization.
Well, we want our employees to be proud of their job title
Absolutely.
because they do a great job. Okay, great. Thank you.
You're
Oh,
very welcome.
Yes.
I did want to make one comment too. The state of Arizona implemented a higher rate for minimum wage. And so you can have an entry-level job, which I believe now is starting around $15. So when you have that entry-level job of flipping burgers, it's hard when there's other jobs out there that did not also see the increase. I've always worked in the private sector, so I'm not quite aware of, everything on pay scales for larger corporations and things. To me, that was kind of like not the wisest choice, in my opinion, because I think entry level was to help teach a child who's like right out of high school how to learn a new job and all the responsibilities that go with it. But I do know what I see in our town is everybody who is here absolutely seems to adore their job. And especially the roads and maintenance people, when they come in for a 5-year award, it's like they've won a Grammy. You know, they give a speech that they thank their supervisor for all that they've learned. And the training that is available within this town and this community just really is amazing to me. And I know that people appreciate their jobs. I see happiness everywhere I go, and I'm catching them at it. I mean, it's not like they don't know I'm coming, you know? And I want to say that the leadership here with Gilbert Davidson becoming the town manager and all the department heads, they're doing a fantastic job. So I just wanted to make that be aware as well.
Thank you, Councilwoman Schumacher. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so moving on to item 2B. Subject is adapting to regional climate impacts, and Ernest, and then we'll go to Patrick Grady.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, members of the council. It's my great pleasure to introduce the speakers for today's presentation on adapting to regional climate impacts. First, we have K. Greg Murray, who earned his PhD in zoology from the University of Florida. His area of specialization is ecology, and he has broad research experience in tropical forest ecology, ornithology, and plant ecology. He's been involved in energy and sustainability issues at the local and regional levels in Michigan and now here in Arizona since 2000. Greg is also certified as a senior ecologist by the Ecological Society of America and as an Arizona Master Naturalist. He is a retired professor of plant science from Hope College in Michigan, and that was in 2021. Our other speaker is Mr. Patrick Grady, who is the chair of the Quad Cities Climate Collaborative, former chairperson of the steering committee of the recently successful PROTECT campaign. PROTECT stands for Planning for the Resiliency of Our Towns, the Environment, Climate, and Tourism. Patrick also serves on the leadership committee of the Save the Dells committee, and Patrick retired from a 30-year career in both community and city community and economic development. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Patrick Grady. Welcome.
Welcome, Mr. Grady. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Vice Mayor, Town Council. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about this very important topic for our region. As Ernest noted, both Greg and I are with the Quad Cities Climate Collaborative. Since July of 2021, our nonpartisan, nonprofit organization has been focused on the PROTECT campaign, and I'll repeat what Ernest just said. So planning for the resiliency of our towns, the environment, climate, and tourism. We had a singular goal. That goal was to secure public and private support for the publication and implementation of a Quad Cities climate profile, an assessment that would highlight the climate impacts, threats, and adaptation opportunities facing our region. Okay, and
Oh, we probably pressed it so many times now, it's gonna,
oh, there it went. Okay.
there we go.
We accomplished that goal thanks to our volunteers, our ally stakeholders, and in this case, the Prescott City Council, who unanimously approved moving forward on the profile in May of last year. Critical to the final outcome were the invaluable contributions and input of a broad-based working group that we put together, comprised of local, county, and federal agencies, municipal staff, and various community-based organizations, including, by the way, and much thanks, your own town manager, Ann Ernest Ruby. The working group helped guide the content of the Quad Cities Climate Profile. Most importantly, as you'll see in this slide above, We owe a debt of gratitude to Dr. Allison Meadow of the University of Arizona, CLEMAS, who oversaw the research, the writing, and the publication. And I might add, they did this for free. Our Protect campaign was officially concluded with the publication of the profile on February 14th of this year, a Valentine present for the protection and care of our Earth, this planet, our common home. On that same day, we released the companion document, Local Climate Action Options for the Quad Cities region. We wanted to present a well-researched list of potential best practice actions that individual communities might consider implementing to address our current and anticipated climate impacts. You can find both of those reports on our Climate Action Hub on our website, and here you'll be able to access updated information on what individual communities and stakeholder partners in our region are doing to achieve a sustainable, climate-resilient future for our region. As the Climate Quad Cities profile makes clear, we're already experiencing the climate impacts of hotter temperatures and long-term drought. Our economy, public health, infrastructure, they're all interdependent with one another and with our natural systems. Taking action on any of these critical strategic elements on the slide above depends upon sustaining the others. These interconnected strategies and solutions, taken together, simultaneously promote environmental integrity as well as economic and thriving economy. And we're doing a tag team here, and I'll turn the next part over to my colleague, Greg.
Thank you very much for having us here. Okay, so temperature and precipitation trends, and so partly what we're going to say is coming directly from the CLEMAS report and then from that companion document as well. The temperature and precipitation trends underlie all of the climate impacts, of course, and the planet is warming, as we all know, and our region is no stranger to that trend. The CLEMAS report projects that the Quad Cities area is likely to experience about a 4 to 5 degree Fahrenheit increase in temperature on average by the midpoint of this century, and by the end of the century up to 11 degrees Fahrenheit increase. It's also no secret that our region is within a mega drought that's been going on for about 23 years now. And although our region is projected to have about even precipitation in total for the rest of this century, it's likely that the drought is going to continue and even magnify, in large part actually, because of the temperature increase. With increased temperatures, we have increased water losses from the soil as a result of evaporation and from transpiration by plants into the air. So that's going to magnify the water shortage. In addition, we can expect, these are the climatological projections, we can expect that most of our rainfall is going to, or an increasing proportion of our rainfall is going to fall in fewer but more intense events. And so the drought conditions will actually be worsened in between those events. So some of the projections from that, from those trends, obviously they're going to involve water resources, and we'll talk about those in a minute. But one of the frequent things that comes up is wildfire frequency and intensity is likely to increase around here. This is, again, not unique to our area. This photograph is actually from a fire that everybody will remember. It's the Camp Fire in California that destroyed Paradise. And this is the nightmare scenario for lots and lots of areas, and our area is no different. We're planning for that. Part of the report is, deals with that increased risk and how we can mitigate it. And so Firewise communities are prominent in that list of adaptation strategies. So a major theme of both the CLIMAS report itself and our working group's local climate actions options document is how can we prepare for the effects of climate change and become more resilient to those changes. As you might imagine, water figures really prominently in there, and we have lots of opportunities to conserve water. For example, promoting the use of water-efficient appliances, fixtures, landscaping features, rainwater harvesting, watering systems, and so forth in both new residential and commercial developments. And we can consider incentives for making those more attractive to both existing and new developments. One of the ways of doing that is exploring incentives offered either by municipalities or by utilities. And in fact, some of those are already operating. The city of Prescott, for example, encourages rainwater harvesting by offering a rebate on those systems. Builders and trade organizations are another really great ally that we would like to see, we would like to make contact with and encourage, because they can make some of those same design features parts of their developments and actually highlight those to prospective buyers. Secondly here, incorporating or enhancing green infrastructure feature in our communities in the Quad Cities region. Stormwater is an undervalued resource. We think of it as a nuisance, but in an arid environment, it's a real resource that we can probably make better use of. Green infrastructure, as you probably know, refers to engineering and ecosystem management strategies and policies that lessen the damage from flooding and turn stormwater into a valuable resource rather than a nuisance. And also uses it for some municipal uses in some cases, but also for aquifer recharge and for enhancing wildlife habitat, something that's really important in our region because we derive such a lot of our economic activity from tourism. Our region has a lot of opportunities for doing that, for enhancing both the natural assets that we love and that bring people to the region to live and to recreate, and all the while decreasing the draw on our aquifers. Now, obviously, stormwater is usually thought of as a liability, and it's a major concern for flooding, both here in Prescott Valley and over in Prescott. You're probably aware that there was a sewage system overflow that resulted from floodwaters that closed one of the city parks in Prescott for a while. Prescott Valley is way ahead of the curve here with respect to some of the other local communities, and so we really applaud Prescott Valley for seeking innovative solutions to their own stormwater situation, and we think that it's actually inspiring to other communities too. We know that it is over in Prescott. And I'm going to turn this back over to.
Thanks, Greg. In fact, just shortly before this meeting started, we met with some of the folks that work with West Consultants, particularly Ricardo Aguirre. So trying to make some contacts there so we can look for best practices in each community, Prescott and Prescott Valley. As Greg pointed out, wildfire protection is obviously very important to both communities. I recall at one point, just 2 or 3 years ago, a consultant spoke to the city of Prescott as part of a fire department presentation and basically said it was only a question of when, not if, we in the Prescott Basin would actually have a more catastrophic wildfire. But we also know it's an issue for grasslands as well. So one strategic option we wanted to lift up today to you all, and we're doing the same thing, by the way, in Prescott. We made a similar presentation on February 14th to Prescott City Council, is fire-adapted communities. Fire-adapted communities incorporates a more community-wide approach. It builds on the success of Yavapai Firewise, but it, again, is more comprehensive. And you likely can read this. I would just point out as an example, looking at resident mitigation, going out along the spoke, you look at working with other partners around Firewise, around defensible space, home hardening, wildfire prep week is identified on that. Under, again, going out the spoke up to the right, regulations, policies, and plans leading through the Community Wildfire Protection Plan or codes and ordinances. And then in public health, looking at the public health impacts under fire adapted communities and how that impacts social services, mental health services, and preparation for smoke impacts. So it's all, like we said at the outset, it's all very interconnected. But the interesting thing about fire adapted communities is that each community will, in effect, adopt their own plans, their own steps for their own unique situation. The Prescott Fire Chief will actually be making a presentation on this very topic to Prescott City Council on June 13th. And I suspect that Fire Chief Durr is probably in touch with your fire chief as well. Another area of potential impact for local governments in particular is increasing the use of renewable energy, reducing our carbon footprint while providing climate resiliency and cost savings. And so here are some key options that we're highlighting. Promoting energy efficiency across all property types. So just not residential, just not existing, but new development as well. And also, again, looking at municipalities. A second area is looking at vehicle electrification. It may be that a first step might be more hybrid vehicles, but clearly there are communities across the country, and we're currently looking at best practices that would help both Prescott and Prescott Valley, looking at the potential for vehicle electrification within their own municipal fleets. Finally, in this area, I want to raise up the Quad Cities Solar Co-op, working with a group out of Phoenix called Solar United Neighbors. A number of our partners kicked off a solar campaign in March of this year. And just yesterday, that application process closed. And we were thrilled and excited to announce today we had a goal of potentially 50 households. We ended up as of yesterday with 103 households across the Quad Cities region, from Paulden to Prescott, other parts, again, of our Quad Cities region, all signing up for this particular co-op. The co-op members have already selected a solar provider, and that solar provider is already out in the community based on the bid documents that they submitted, giving council to next steps to potential users. So we're very excited. This also within our local climate action option report as well. And another energy option, kudos for your work on undertaking a municipal energy audit with Schneider Electric. We featured your work in our April newsletter. major energy improvements from HVAC units, building automated system enhancements to electrical and plumbing upgrades. And the key for the audience and the viewers, and obviously yourselves, is a $6.8 million phase one investment will result in $11 million life cycle cost of savings. That's huge. Municipal energy audits, energy efficiency improvements, water conservation actions, all of those were in the local climate action options that we released in February. And your energy audit is a great model for other communities in our region. Another area to highlight, and you can see the number there, is energy use by water, including pumping stations and wastewater treatment facilities, is a significant local energy cost. We're in discussions with your staff to work up a best practice cost benefit case study to highlight the solar project at your own wastewater treatment facility, which is pictured in the upper left-hand corner of the photos on this slide.
Neither one of us could remember the whole thing, so that's why we're doing the tag team. Of course, one of the things that we're doing here was we're highlighting what we consider to be maybe the lowest hanging fruit from among a whole bunch of different options, and we're hitting different areas. Those areas sort of fell into, the adaptation options fell into 6 groups that were on one of those earlier slides. But one of those has to do with land use as well. Lots of people, as I said before, live in and visit our area because of its natural amenities. That's one of the reasons that brought many of us here, and that brings a lot of tourism dollars here too. And we have lots of opportunities to enhance or protect those by making investments in high-value open spaces. And some of those are listed here. Granite Dells Regional Park, which is going to happen. The Glassford Hill cooperative agreement between the state and Prescott Valley, and even the Verde Valley, or Upper Verde River, the protection from that is actually one of those things that really will help us both with adapting to some of the challenges associated with climate change, but also add to our protecting and enhancing the economic vitality of the area. Now, as the working group considered the local options that could help to mitigate the risks associated with climate change to our region, we paid particular attention, as I was saying a few minutes ago, to options that would simultaneously serve to provide long-term benefits to environment and resiliency to climate change, but also to enhance community health and economic vitality. So we just wanted to end with another sort of reference to the URL here for the Quad Cities Climate Action Hub, because it contains a lot more information. It contains both of those entire reports, the CLIMAS report itself, which has lots of really great background information in it, in addition to a bunch of links to useful sources that other communities are pursuing. And it also has the PDF of the working group's climate action options document. There are lots of great ideas there that can serve as starting points for discussion, and could lead to significant progress and even cost savings for a lot of our communities. And so we're really interested in putting different groups of people together, the community organizations, the municipalities, the city staff, and so forth, and for that matter, with the private sector in the form of the ranching community, which is very significant here, the business community, development community, and so forth. This is a win-win situation for everybody, and sustainability is kind of at the heart of all of it. So with that, I'd like to say thank you on behalf of both of us. We'd be happy to entertain any questions now or through correspondence or with individuals. So thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for
Appreciate it.
joining us today. Do we have any questions?
Could I? Want to give a credit to the mayor and council for their leadership because this is how this all ties in together. When the council created their new strategic plan, they clearly laid out 4 areas. Water stewardship was one of them. We've done an extensive amount of work on that with our new water management plan. And I want to highlight one of the slides that they showed was, I talked about one that maintains environmental integrity, economic vitality, and community health. That's the exact same principles that the council adopted with the water management strategy, you know, looking at protecting our aquifer, making sure we have a vibrant, growing economy. Without an economy, without money coming in, you can't do all the work that you need to do, and then protecting our quality of life. So it all aligns perfectly with the work that this regional group has been doing. And then on top of that, the new General Plan 2035 also calls out very specifically all of these initiatives. And so embedded in that, and that's how we've been able to work with this group, is the council had already said, this is where we need to go in terms of making sure that we have a resilient and prosperous community for the future. And then, as I mentioned, the water management plan. And then what was highlighted is that master drainage and recharge plan. I had a meeting earlier today where we had an update, and we are so excited to come back to the council to show the data that has been generated and what that's going to mean for us in terms of future planning, but also starting to look at those really creative recharge opportunities that's going to be transformative to this community. So I just want to thank the mayor, not being here, but the mayor and council for this work, because this is monumental, it's transformative, and we are excited that we're working with key partners to make it happen.
Well, and I want to thank you both for the kudos you gave us for our energy audit, our wastewater wheel that we have that Gilbert put together, and we're implementing our master drainage plan that we're working on, our solar field at our wastewater treatment plant, and then also our preservation of open space surrounding our core and our town. And I guess I would like to have more information on your organization. Is there a membership, or how does that work? You're a nonprofit. Is there an executive director or membership fees, or how does that work?
We're all volunteers. So it's a nonprofit, and we do have a board, and I'm president of the board. We have a board of about 6 or 7 members and another 3 or 4 adjunct members and 2 students from Prescott College. So it's a pretty diverse, broad-based group.
Mm-hmm.
We also work with another group called the Interfaith Climate Action Team, which represents a number of faith communities around the region as well.
Interesting. And how long have you been in existence for?
Since 2016.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The name will not be familiar to you because that was just changed 3 weeks ago.
Oh, got it. Okay. I wondered.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was actually formally called the Yavapai Climate Change Coalition. And we felt with the emphasis that we were placing on the Quad Cities profile, the Quad Cities Local Action Options Report, that Quad Cities needed to be in our name. And we felt that the new name, the Quad Cities Climate Collaborative, aligned well with our new mission.
So do you have, so I presume if I go to this, I'll see your mission and your strategy and all
yes.
that? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for
Okay.
being here.
Thank you all. Thanks.
Okay. Are we good, Gilbert? Moving on? Excuse me. Okay, item 2C, comprehensive fee analysis. And we have our fabulous finance director here, Katie Pell.
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor Hunt and council members. So as you all remember, back in October, we had discussed the preliminary project that we were going to be undertaking to consolidate our fee structure and analyze different fees for the town. So since that point, we have evaluated a number of departments. Future departments, this is on a later slide, but just so you all are aware, any of our water and sewer rates will be adjusted through the water sewer rate study that is currently being undergone with the outside consulting firm. And in addition to that, our development services fees, are going to wait right now as we're in the interim process of bringing a new director on board for that department. So we're going to wait for those sections of fees, but we did address many of our departments and fees, and I'm just going to go over those results today. With this proposal, it's a lot of changes. We do plan on posting this on our website in about a week, and then we would bring it back to council for public hearing and potential action in August. So with that, we had 468 original fees, and that is all fees townwide. We worked on going through benchmarking, customer experience, as well as cost recovery to try and modernize some of those fees and consolidate where we could. So we eliminated 79 fees in our recommendations, and we went from 468 fees to a recommended 319 fees. And that includes 12 additional fees that we weren't charging previously, 19 consolidated fees that came from 101 original fees, 23 modified fees, and then the 265 unchanged fees, which there were various ones through different departments in addition to the water, sewer, and development services fees. So we went through and looked at applicable laws and statutes, analysis of service costs, pricing factors and rationale, as well as the customer experience. And all of those things were paramount as we reviewed this and worked on our recommendations. So this is just going to be a synopsis by area. These are the general fees that impact every area. Previously, we charged a lot of different rates for photocopies. We're recommending to go to one rate, no matter if it's black and white or color, and it just makes a lot of sense. It's easier to track. It's also easier to implement. We're not changing our commercial public records requests at $25 per request. That is just for commercial public records, not for private ones that are for non-commercial purposes. Additionally, electronic media. Previously, we were charging $15 for the labor, and then anywhere from, it was approximately $4 for the media that would come with it. So we're changing that to $20 per request, and we're calling it electronic media. We actually had VHS or video cassettes still available on our fee schedule, and I'm sure you'll be surprised to hear that those haven't been used a whole lot, especially in recent years. I'm not even sure where you can procure one. So that's the general area. Community services, we had a lot of changes. We had a very complex fee structure that made things difficult for our staff as well as the public. So in this area, we actually consolidated 79 fees and eliminated 53 fees. So a couple of key highlights there are reducing the variations of room rentals. Now we've got 3 different variations: regular rooms, the crystal room, and council chambers, and split by either resident or non-resident. So it simplifies that structure across the board. And then we also are moving any programming fees. Most of them were under the purview of the Community Services Department to set the appropriate fees based on cost recovery goals. And we want to continue that, but give them a little bit more ability to adjust as additional programs come up during the year. They'll do a cost analysis for each program type and make sure that we're recovering what we need to supplement that program. And it works better than establishing set fees in that area because those things change so rapidly. And then pool admission and rental, we're proposing the $0 admission, as well as a change in the full pool rental costs. We worked a lot on including things. So if we had multiple fees that were charged for each element of a rental or something like that, we worked on consolidating that so there would be one charge, so that we weren't tacking on additional charges for each desired item. And then finally, a use agreement application. And currently, we partner with a variety of youth sports and other nonprofit organizations and community partners to offer them free use of our fields and facilities. This would require them to pay a one-time fee of $40 to be considered for that use agreement. Then they get subsequent either discount or completely waived fees for field usage. And that's not an annual fee, that is a one-time. And it just allows us to have a better control on that process and to make sure that the entities that are engaging in those agreements with us are local entities that have those approved use agreements. And then going on to the second page of community services, again, a lot of fees, even with the refined list on theirs. So field and facility rentals, we had varying field rentals based on the type of use as well as the number of people, and same with our ramadas and different things. So we've cut down those tremendously. The community services staff, Elise and Bobby Kieran, were fantastic in working on this, as was Casey Van Haren. They helped a lot establish fees that are going to be easier for them to implement and for the residents. And then we didn't have a basketball court fee, so we needed to add that. Additionally, we added a unique facility rental item, which would allow, if there is a special request for perhaps a entire park rental where somebody wants to rent out the entire park, it would be something where the community services director would look at it in conjunction with myself as finance director, to where we could come up with a fee that is not necessarily in our schedule, but it's allows us to respond to those unique requests as they come up. Yes.
Reference to the field rentals, does that include the new Astro surface, the new field, soccer field that we have out there?
Yes, it does. It does include the soccer field. There's actually 3 fields over there, so that it would be a cost for one of those would be for the baseball, softball fields, and then the soccer field. So that, oh, go ahead.
Have any, some fields are smaller than others, some are for, different.
We used to vary that a lot, and that's not actually very typical across other organizations as we looked at the benchmarking on it. And it just added complication to the process. Because with any of our fields, they're available for public use at any time. It's just putting your name and reservation on it for that specific use. And the majority of our field rentals are actually no charge because of those use agreements that we discussed earlier, because most of them are being used by the youth sports and those groups. And then we also have full event rental. So that's per location. So if somebody were to reserve that whole area of the AstroTurf, then it would be $2,000 a day for that full event per day. That includes everything like their electrical and everything else, where we used to piecemeal those things out and dependent on the estimated attendance at the event. And then we also added a amount for the entire Civic Center amphitheater area. So that's all of those green spaces and stage. So there's, again, a set amount for that. Now, each of those individual areas can be rented by residents or non-residents if they're just renting it on an hourly basis still.
Has anybody ever asked us to rent the whole center before?
I believe we've had a few requests in the past, but not for full day events very often.
And we have something in place, presumably, or can get something in place that says who we would rent to and.
Vice Mayor, so in terms of who would, like a qualifier type thing, like some
Yes.
objective criteria? I don't know if there is. That's something
We can look at that though, right?
we could, explore, yeah, I'd have to be careful, just making sure that we're fair to everyone. But if there's certain financial criteria or capability criteria, we could certainly
Right.
look at that.
Right, okay. Yeah, let's look at that, especially since we have a fee in here now. We want to, okay.
Quick question also, is there liability insurance when they do the rental? Are they providing it or are we, or the town?
When they go through special events process, they do have to procure some liability insurance.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
With reference to some of these fields, they don't have any benches. And I was just wondering, do we have access to collapsible stadium benches, that can be rented and put out for various fields? Do we have any?
I am not aware of anything. Yeah, but that's definitely something we can talk with community services about and see what kind of options are available there. Additionally, offering tournament rentals at a lesser cost per day. Again, these would be those for-profit type events, and it would be per field area. So if you were to rent the MVP amphitheater area, the artificial turf area, along with the fourplex, you would pay for both of those areas. So, and then we also have added change the facility site supervisor. There's times when there's tournaments or special events where they need a staff member there all times. So we've adjusted those rates to better meet the actual costs to the town to make sure those individuals are getting compensated. And there's no out of pocket to the town for those special events. Neighborhood services. So in neighborhood services, dog licenses, the sad little puppy in jail, yes. We've looked at our impound fees. We had 3 fees previously for different types of animals and different situations. There's no differentiation in those in our tracking, and it made sense to go to one single consolidated fee for that. Additionally, with dog licenses, we offered a variety of variations, and we're recommending a 1-year and 3-year option to match with the rabies certificates, as well as only a 1 year for unaltered animals, which then would need to be renewed annually for those. And there is a slight increase there with the 1 year altered. It goes up $2 from what we had previously. So with police, we also have a few changes. Right now, with our fingerprinting and background checks, we are basically our cost recovery is not where it should be, so we're recommending adjusting those fees. But we are recommending adding in a discount for active educators for fingerprinting, because we do get a lot of teachers that come in to get their fingerprinting done. And then background checks, anyone who's joining the military has to get a background check, and sometimes even those in the military need to get one from the local police department. So we are wanting to offer those at a discounted rate for those service members. And then body-worn camera records have come up significantly now that we have a body-worn camera program in place. Those costs can get out of hand for somebody trying to get video of an incident. And so if it's not for commercial purposes, we're recommending that it be capped at $100 or the actual cost, whichever is less. And there would be no charge for victims who are trying to get a copy of a recording. And then with false alarms, this is an area that we've discussed a lot. So our recommendation there would be to go to 2 freebies, essentially. So people would have 2 free false alarms before, in a 12-month period, before they would start being charged. There would no longer be a registration fee if they get a false alarm. So there would no longer be that annual registration fee that we've had in the past. And then they would pay $250 for each additional occurrence. So if they get up to 3, they would have to pay that amount. Now, that doesn't happen typically. In the review of the records of false alarms, we have approximately 55 that were occurring annually. So it was pretty minimal on those, and there were only, I believe, a few on the list that potentially would be repeat offenders up to the third time where you would actually pay the fee there. That is also something that we're looking at, we're working with the police department on to work through that, as our current vendor may be changing with that, where we may handle some of those billings internally because of the frequency, to where we don't need to invest as much in the ongoing operational costs of that. And we can track it better and see where we're at the end of this next year to see if any adjustments need to be made. But we were focusing more on a preventative and educational piece to help people understand what they can do on their end to prevent those false alarms from happening.
So does this mean, is this business and residential or just?
Correct.
It is.
It's both. We did not have any residential that had 3 occurrences like that in a 12-month period.
And then, does this mean we're going to start responding to false alarms?
They already are, yes.
Okay.
And Vice Mayor and members of council, this one we've spent a lot of time internally discussing and debating, and the chief is here as well. And we certainly don't want to place an undue burden on our public safety response of going out to false alarms, and it just wastes everyone's time. So, but we also want to be sensitive to the business community, and if any homeowner that accidents happen, and what our current policy is they get put on one false alarm and they get put on a permanent list, and then they're, for the rest of their existence here in PV, they're paying a fee. And we didn't feel comfortable with that, and we had people complaining or concerned about what we were doing of collecting those dollars. So I think, we will continue to keep monitoring. If it doesn't work out this way, then we would want to be able to come back to the council. At some point, we'll find the right sweet spot with it. But I think that, making sure that we give everyone kind of that 3 strikes, you're out type of thing. You get a few, accidents, and then you're going to have to pay and be more mindful of the impact that it has on our public safety officers.
This seems fair.
And then with our town clerk area, so we have liquor licenses. Right now, we charge a variety of rates depending on the type of liquor license issued. That was not typical for our benchmarking cities. We're recommending that we go to $400 for the application and then reduce the annual renewal. Most businesses will see a reduction there. Right now, they pay the set amount of whatever they paid at the time of application, which ranges from $50 to $375. And this will even that out where they pay the $400 upfront and then $200 annually, no matter what type of liquor license it is. Additionally, adding an extension of premises fee and decreasing the special event for a single day event. Currently, it's at $75 and it would go to $50. We don't see a lot of activity in that area, and it seemed a little high when we allow multiple day events at a relatively low rate. Additionally, on the business licenses, we would charge $60 for the application, and that would include the zoning review. And that is less than what we charge currently, because we do charge them $45 plus an additional $20 if they're a physical location business. So we would charge the $60 per application, and then we would decrease the annual renewal to $30. And we would increase the single vendor special event to $25 from $15. So that would go up a little bit. Additionally, the peddler solicitor fee would increase from $50 to $100 because of the time spent on reviewing those applications, and a background check is included.
Vice Mayor, members of council, just another point of what we tried to achieve through all of these fees, and we'll keep working on them in the years ahead, is put ourselves in the customer's, shoes. And if you're like me, If I go to a place and they say, oh, it costs, costs $10. Oh, you want this thing, it's $2 more, or you want that, it's $5 more, and so by the end, you're at $25. It's just tell me it's $25 and I get the full package. So we're trying to make sure we couple things in together from a basically, make it simpler, easier to understand, and it's more comprehensive. So that's like the business licenses right now our base one, and then it was an option. It was mandatory that they had to have the zoning and then the inspection. So just roll it into one and say, this is what we do for you. So trying to make it where it seems like it's a better deal for everyone.
So the next steps with this, as I discussed previously, were posting of the fee modification schedule, as well as action in August that would revolve around a public hearing and potential adoption of the fee schedule and changes, because so many of these fees are in different places. Some of them impact town code, and other changes need to be made. So we would have an ordinance reading at that point, and then the second ordinance read, and then they would be effective 30 days thereafter. And again, as discussed earlier, future review would include development services, all the fees in that area, as well as public works fees. We haven't charged those in the past, but now that we're undergoing the drainage study, there may be some additional changes there, as well as right-of-way fees, and then utility fees through the water and sewer rate study results. And with that, are there any questions or comments?
Questions for Katie? So Katie, our goal is always full cost recovery, but I know that's really difficult. And I know our goal a lot of times is to be competitive with surrounding jurisdictions, especially for economic development. And I know that we haven't probably in a very long time raised any of our fees. But and that you've in this analysis with other jurisdictions not recommended raising it to the top amount so that we do get full cost recovery. So is there a proposal to increase appropriately so we can get closer to cost recovery by cost of living or something? Have you thought about that at all?
A lot of jurisdictions do implement a CPI change in their rate structure. However, that's something that I think we need to look at. Once we get it in this format where we have all of our fees in one place, it'll make the annual review process a lot easier. And it'll allow us to really look at those, because sometimes CPI isn't going to necessarily impact all of those fees the same way. So it can be good, but we don't necessarily want to artificially inflate them just because of that. And you're correct, cost recovery isn't near 100%. Our goal originally was 100%, but there was no potential way we could recommend changing fees that significantly. So our goal now that everything's in a consolidated format is over this next year to track them in a different way so we can make sure we're really seeing what actually is going in, because there's a lot of estimates made on indirect costs that are included in a fee. So as we break those down and simplify our structure, it makes it easier to track those items so we can apply better formulas and analysis to it for future years. So that's kind of where we're doing a starting point. We didn't want to jump from, where we're at now. Animal licenses are a good point of that, because we're barely cost recovering anything, but we wouldn't want to take our $10 fee that's current. We proposed a $12 fee instead for a single year altered animal, but we didn't want to take it to full cost recovery, which would be significantly higher.
Right.
And, dissuade people from licensing their animals. So there was a balance made through that process, and that's something that we'll continue to work towards achieving, that 100% cost recovery. We just need to do it in implemental stages and monitor things as we go.
Well, as an example, the fingerprint fee, there's no way, definitely not $5, and even $10 doesn't cover costs of whoever is rolling that fingerprint fee, or however we do it nowadays. It doesn't cover that person's cost.
We actually are very fortunate right now. We have a volunteer who does the majority of all of our fingerprints. However, it does, but however, that is subject to change in the future. So that's something that we just need to be cognizant of as we're looking through all of these. Yeah, because you're correct. There's a lot of fees where we're not even coming close, and this is just a small step towards improving that while not pushing away our customers in a negative way.
So maybe next year at this time, once we have everything, including water and development services and public works, we can build into the ordinance some kind of CPI.
I don't see, why we couldn't look at
Or
different,
cost of living, I'm sorry.
we could probably look at different parameters and see what could be done. Some fees are a little more restrictive, like we've got our impact fees listed here, but they have to go through a complete separate process. But with this consolidated fee structure, it will be easier for the public to go to one place. You know, you can search the document and you can find any fee that you're looking for that the town is going to charge, which is the goal of this.
Yes.
Did this include everything with the legal department? So like, did this overhaul fee design, was this also like for speeding tickets or dog at large or anything like that? So legal's not really involved in any of this part, right?
For those magistrate court type fees, those are more subject to change by legislative rulings and everything else. So eventually we would like to get everything, including those in one place, but those are a lot more susceptible to those outside changes that we need to track.
Okay, great, thank you.
Katie, I know this wasn't easy. You probably had to dig for some fees that we didn't even know we have, so I appreciate this. And I appreciate they're all going to be in one spot. Because I remember when I first came on, I asked for a fee sheet, and I got looked at really weird. So thank you for doing this.
It has been a lot of work from a lot of different departments and couldn't have done it without the help of various team members across the organization.
So this is customer service oriented too, and I appreciate it. Have a question? Okay. Awesome.
This is all online.
These are all online with the council packet, but we're going to post the fees in about a week, pending any slight changes or modifications if we hear from any council members on it.
And so then once it's online, will they be able to go through the process online? Like if they want to reserve a Ramada, can they do that online?
Oh, they can already do that online, correct. Yeah, through Rec One, people can reserve any of the facilities that they want to. Now, some of our other fees aren't all available online, but that's something as we're looking at a rehaul of our ERP system and various program changes, that would be definitely something that would be helpful if there's one place they can go to do all those things.
And these won't take effect until the end of September.
Correct.
So water, development services, and public works won't even be until after that.
Correct.
Right. Councilwoman Dickinson.
Yes, I had a question with reference to the impound fee that you're charging per animal. I know the last time I tried to surrender a stray cat, the Humane Society charged me $25. And I do know that we only keep animals for a certain period of time before we take them over to the Humane Society. Isn't that correct?
Correct. We don't keep them in our facility very long. This is just if we do have them in our facility.
And so are there any additional charges that are involved in that?
Yes, once they're over to the Humane Society, the public would be subject to whatever fees the Humane Society charges.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 2D, proposed community facilities district policy. And it's you.
So I just get to do the introduction today. So I just want to introduce you to Mark Reeder from Stiefel. He has been in Arizona public finance for over 30 years, and he has joined us today as an expert with CFDs and bonds for those. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mark.
Welcome, Mr. Reeder.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Madam Vice Mayor, members of the council. Thanks for having me up. I've been told I have about 10 minutes, so I'm here to help educate the council on community facilities districts. The acronym is CFDs, and I know that you're probably somewhat familiar with them. But I wanted to give you kind of a quick overview of what really your city, your town has done, what's being done around the state, and then see if you have any questions with respect to the policies and procedures that you will be considering to adopt relative to the potential formation of a community facilities district in your community. So I've got a few pictures here on my PowerPoint slide. See if I can, and I'm going to kind of go back and forth here a little bit because I've got some case studies here. I think you probably like that slide better than you like that slide. So I'll go back and forth a little bit. Community facilities districts, really, before I get into the details, are brand new living, breathing political subdivisions formed by our cities and towns and our counties in Arizona. And so I like to open it up in that vein. As you know, developers, there's a lot of growth going on around the state. There's a lot of growth going on in the town of Prescott Valley and the Quad Cities area. As a result of increased land costs, as a result of increased inflation, as a result of higher interest rates, and complications associated with development, you will likely from time to time have a developer approach the town of Prescott Valley asking for consideration to form a brand new living, breathing political subdivision in your community. Okay, it's been done in the past up here, and to my knowledge, you don't have any interest at the moment, to my knowledge, but wouldn't surprise me in the near future that you'll have a developer approach the town to consider this, essentially this tool in our toolbox. So I think that's one reason why staff wanted to go ahead and have you adopt some very good policies and procedures that help us evaluate a potential opportunity in your town, okay? So when these districts are ultimately formed, if they are formed in your community, under the statute, those special districts, CFDs, have the power and the authority to issue bonds, tax-exempt bonds at lower interest rates to help the developer finance the public infrastructure component of their development. And there's really two types of bonds. I'm not going to get into all those. There's really three types of bonds. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but there's property tax bonds known as general obligation bonds that they ask for, special assessment bonds, and to a lesser extent, revenue bonds. So when these districts are formed, and as we go through the application and the negotiations with the developer, we determine what bonds they're asking for within the confines of our policies and procedures, okay? So as you know, if you were to form a district, it does entail the issuance of bonds by the special district, for the most part, to reimburse the developer for the public infrastructure that they generally put in the ground up front. All good? Real estate development is a very risky business, and so when we form these, we have to be incredibly careful, and the policies and procedures that you're going to incorporate will help us continue to make sure that we're all protected and we do the right thing. So what I thought I would do here real quick is just share with you some recent examples. This is a community facility district down in the town of Florence, and it really helped transform the city of Florence. It was a developer, Pulte Homes, that actually approached the town of Florence 25 years ago. In the blue line there, that's the district boundaries, because these are not citywide or townwide districts, as you know. They're only for the specific development. That's about a 6,000 acre community facilities district that we formed about 25 years ago. The red line is about 1,100 acres. It was a separate district in this particular case. So we've been working on this for 25 years, and over the years we issue bonds as development occurs, and the bond monies is used to repay the developer for the infrastructure, as I mentioned, that they put in the ground to help them invest back in the community and to help them with, for the most part, enhance public infrastructure. So we wanted to share that one with you. This was one we just worked on at the city of Peoria. A lot of growth in the city of Peoria. As you know, there's a big chip plant being built out there. And you can see the yellow boundaries there. This is out by Lake Pleasant. This one was formed by the City of Peoria Council 3 or 4 years ago. The developer has done a good job, and they have invested a significant amount of money. And we recently sold bonds in this case for about $5 million in this example to reimburse the developer for their public infrastructure. This is kind of some recent drone pictures that we took. And you can see one of the advantages of a CFD is it does allow the developer to put in an enhanced level of public infrastructure, generally speaking. You'll have nicer landscape, wider streets, flood mitigation, if you will, parks, open space, things of that nature. So when we form these, you'll see a lot of enhanced public infrastructure as it relates to the development. This is a transaction we just did in the city of Avondale. They had a big developer with the public home builders come in, and we went through the due diligence process with them, structured the transactions, and you can see here in the city of Avondale, this Alomar Community Facilities District is extremely well done with some really good development progress. You can see there's some of the enhanced infrastructure that the developer put in as it relates to Alomar. So we wanted to just share with the council real quick, the life cycle of a development community takes a long time. As you all know, it takes several years to even entitle property. So we have a nice little chart here that shows the entitlement, the infrastructure improvements, the development, and ultimately the build out. So as you know, during the entitlement process is when a developer would potentially come in and ask town staff to consider a community facilities district and the related type of bonds that would be issued within that development. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you. I hope that's helpful. These CFDs have really the authority to finance virtually any type of public infrastructure improvement. I kind of shared with you in those case studies what we've done, but you can see here streets and roads, landscaping, a lot of utility work goes into these, flood control, street lights, park and rec facilities, lighting, et cetera. So we wanted to share with you under the statute, if they did come in, kind of the public infrastructure that would be eligible to be financed. The town of Prescott Valley is not alone. The statute's been around about 35 years as Arizona started to grow. And you can see here some familiar cities around the state that have elected to proceed with the formation of a community facilities district over the years. I was on the phone today with the town of Camp Verde, and they indicated to me that they wanted to talk because of some interest up there, just by way of example. So about 25% of our cities, we have about 90 cities, as you're aware, I'd say about 25% of our cities, most of these high growth, do have and have considered and have formed community facilities districts. These are your current, you recognize these. You have 6 outstanding CFDs in your community. You have others that aren't active anymore. And we actually formed a community facilities district 20 years ago to buy the water company back then as a result of some favorable tax treatment. So those bonds are all paid off, and that CFD is no longer around. So I just wanted to share with you these CFDs that you're familiar with. And I went through most of this with you in terms of the background of the CFDs. The policies and procedures that you have in your packet, it's about 12 pages. It's very thorough. We've spent a lot of time with staff providing input, as well as your legal counsel. Staff had some great ideas. And so this will be, I think, ultimately adopted by the council. And so if a developer wants to come in and consider forming a CFD, staff will give them a copy of this, and it outlines all the requirements under which the town of Prescott Valley would consider forming a CFD. We would then, have discussions with the developer and start to formulate a recommendation if staff decided to go ahead and bring it to council. So that really concludes I don't think I went over 10 minutes. I hope not. We know you're familiar with them. I didn't want to really bore you but hope that was helpful. And I'm glad to entertain any questions of the council. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Reader? So, Mr. Reader, would you say this document is kind of standard amongst cities you've worked with?
Yes, I would say this 12-page document is very similar to some more so recent cities that have been involved in CFD transactions and have incorporated some recent legislative changes. So yes, very comprehensive and very comparable.
So when a developer comes in and talks about wanting to form a CFD and we're sitting across from them, we hand it to them, they won't be surprised.
Madam Vice Chair, that is correct.
Good, good. And it sounds like because we were doing it on an ad hoc basis before, that this document is going to protect the town more so than what we were doing before.
Madam Chair, members of the council, that is correct.
And it's going to be in our best interest.
Yes.
So would you say, because I always try to explain CFDs to people that ask questions, because people are shocked, you know, they don't read that document when they sign their house papers.
That's right.
Would you say, because I kept hearing you say enhanced level of roads and street lighting and landscaping, blah, blah, blah. Would you say that the things that are put in with CFDs are usually over and above the minimum conditions of approval?
Madam Vice Chair, members of the council, I would respond to that by saying, when we ask the developers, when we get in the room and start negotiating with them relative to the formation of a community facilities district, we ask them, what would your development look like if you did not have a CFD? And what does your development look like if the town elects to form a CFD in which you can be reimbursed for your public infrastructure? And they will tell us, and I think for the most part it's true, they will tell us that it'll be a high level of enhanced public infrastructure.
Because a lot of that comes in with the developer agreement too.
Yes.
Some of that over and above stuff.
That is correct.
So, so I guess Gilbert and I were talking beforehand, and I talked about maybe an example of where this could be using this kind of a document as opposed to how we did it in the past. And I used Quillwood as an example because that's the one I'm most familiar with.
Right.
Because, you know, we've had to use town resources to come in and help pay on some of our CFDs when they couldn't pay. So, Gilbert, you gave me a fine example.
Vice Mayor, Council, and Mr. Reader, so one of, I think, the approaches that we would take with this new policy is it would be being very conservative. So when a developer comes in, they always like this tool and they want to get the money up front. So one of the things that we can mandate is, oh no, you will build the public infrastructure per this plan. You'll get reimbursed once there's a sufficient amount of tax base that's created within that development. And the reason that is, it protects the town is when you have an economic downturn and there's not a sufficient number of properties in that, this item gets put before all of you
Right.
because you have to make sure the bond holders get paid no matter what. And that means you have to raise the property tax sometimes way beyond what our policy stated threshold is to make that, that payment. So these policies are designed to make sure that we're, getting the enhancements, but also protecting the residents that will live in those communities so it doesn't go above whatever our threshold is, if it's $3 per 100 or $2.50 or whatever the threshold ultimately will be.
Because is there a vote for the CFD?
Yes, when a district is formed, it's voted in by the landowners, which is generally one property owner.
Right?
maybe two.
Yeah.
And as part of the financing plan that we identify in formation, there is a vote to vote in the bond authorization for X amount of dollars for reimbursement of the public infrastructure. That's in the case of the general obligation bonds alternative. And that will also be voted in upon formation.
So I wasn't on the council when these 5 or 6 CFDs that we have now were formed, but I know there was some heartache and has been some heartache over the years with regard to those CFDs.
Yep.
And I just want the residents who are in the audience and who are listening to know that this document that is being presented to us today, and I thank you, Mr. Reader, for your help on this, and Katie too, is going to help us protect the town more now if anybody comes in and asks for a CFD. And I'm glad that you said that when we do offer a CFD, that what they give us back is supposed to be over and above what our minimum conditions are.
Right.
Because that's in my memory bank now, and I'm going to remember that when they come in.
Yeah, there's been lessons learned over the years. As you know, it's been around 35 years. And I think as Mr. Davidson said, in your case, if we consider a financing in the future, it'll be done very conservative manner. There's some additional tools in our toolbox that we incorporate into the structures to help protect the town and the citizens that live in those districts in the event there's a reduction of a tax base or what have you. So I think you've got a good staff and you've got good advisors and attorneys so that such that if we do consider them in the future, we'll put them together in that manner. I'm confident that we can.
No, Mr. Reader, we have a great staff.
Fantastic staff. What did I say? Good staff?
Got a good staff.
That's right.
So,
Yes.
Councilwoman Schumacher.
So I do just want to make for clarification for someone who may be listening in that's not really aware of what we're talking about. When a CFD is formed, only the people that live within that CFD are paying on the bond, correct? It's only for that area. So Stone Ridge is responsible for the CFD of Stone Ridge. So if you live outside of an area that's not within a CFD, don't think that you're helping to pay for that. So I just wanted to make that clarification, if that's correctly stated.
That is absolutely correct. Yes.
Not affect
Yes.
everyone, it just affects the neighborhoods that have CFDs. Like Granville does not have a CFD, but Stone Ridge does, Quailwood does. So this is something that when you buy property within a CFD, they have to make you be aware that you have a CFD that will always be part of your house payment until it's come to fruition, correct?
That is correct.
So in a neighborhood, if there's a new one that's being formed, and let's say there's 100 homes in it, the first person to buy a home begins paying against that CFD. When the 100th house is now being built, they have not had to pay all along as a new resident. They don't have a cap, correct? It's when the actual whole CFD is paid for. It's not that each house will have $20,000 to have to pay, and this first person started paying the minute they moved in. The last person doesn't pay until they move in, so maybe they've only paid $20,000, but the other person's paid $20,000 all along. So it's a generalization for the entire neighborhood to then pay, correct?
That is correct. So there will be a specific defined, as mentioned, tax rate in the case of the general obligation bonds, right? At $3 or $3.25, whatever that is. And the public policy goal is to always maintain a tax rate around $3.25. So when a person moves in, there will be a tax base. There could be some bonds issued to support the 325. And when they move in, they will start paying that 325 until they move out.
And
As
for
other
when
people
someone
join, yeah,
property, correct?
That's correct.
So you are able to move out and leave,
Yes.
but the person moving in needs to be aware that there could be a CFD assessment on that property.
that is correct. That is correct. Under state law, and you mentioned this, when you purchase a new home in a new master plan community, you are required, the developer, the home builder is required to disclose the CFD, the existence of the CFD, what the tax rate is, and that is part of the closing process.
Usually when a CFD is created, it's also because the developer or if a place is already in existence, maybe needs help from the town in order to, let's say if they have a private well or several private wells and they want to create a CFD and have the town then manage that, then maybe a CFD could be formed for that as well, or if they were to need assistance in the future. Is that correct?
CFD could be used to acquire that public infrastructure component from a developer, in your example, yes.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Reader. Thank you, Councilwoman.
Okay. Hope
Okay.
that's helpful. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you again. Thanks for
Okay.
having me. Good night.
Okay, Mr. Keith, you're up. Item number 2E, CH2M Hill OMI Jacobs Amendment for Operations Maintenance and Management Agreement.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Council. Good to see you all. I'm going to jump in, before I jump into the amendment number 4 details, we have Danny Zamora here. He's the project manager for Prescott Valley, and he wanted to share a few highlights from this past year. And then after he's done, I'll come back up here and jump into the details of the amendment.
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor, council members. As Scott said, I'm Danny Zamora, project manager for Jacobs. I'll give you a few highlights here, try to get through them as quick as possible. So here's the crew, here's the staff for Jacobs right here. We've got 30 FTEs that work here for the town of Prescott Valley. Here's our safety. Where Jacobs is really, really big on safety, so we've got 24,000 hours of safe work hours. We do our pre-task plans before any work that we go out and get done. Safety observations, that we go out and look at all the jobs that we're doing out there and go and look at all the crews and what they're doing. Here are some customer compliments that we got. We get a bunch of them that we get for great work that we're doing for the town. Here's some more for water and wastewater. And here's our water service connections per employee. So you see the median is 440. Here in Prescott Valley with Jacobs, we are 1,255 customers per employee. Sewer connections, median 593. For Jacobs, we are at 1,842. Here's some operational challenges and highlights. As they were talking earlier, staffing, sometimes it's hard to get staffing that want to come out here and work, kind of doing what the jobs that we do. Material prices have went up. Getting materials in a timely fashion since COVID has been a little bit of a challenge. Highlights, we were named the Outstanding Performer by ADEQ, an environmental award from ADEQ. We had some well rehab projects that we have completed. Culvert cleaning, we do a lot of culvert cleaning. We had 25 culverts cleaned this year from our collections crew. Additional service projects, so we got 25 additional service projects that we completed this year. We added a 4th pump, VFD to Granville Booster Station, get more water pumped out. Security cameras at both offices. We got a backup disinfection going on over at the wastewater treatment plant and made several improvements to multiple water storage tanks. Here we are, the town parade. We're a major sponsor for the town in this parade. And here's all our regional resources that we have through Jacobs. So we've got, we're worldwide, so we've got a ton of resources that we can reach out to water, wastewater experts that help us with, all of our compliance issues, anything that we have. This year we had our, one of the guys over at the wastewater plant, it's our lab analyst. He had to go out for surgery for 2 months. We were able to get 2 people from our regional support to come in and do our lab analysts for that whole 2 months. We just rotated 2 people through. And like I say, they're there for us with the compliance and any of the maintenance support. We can borrow from any of the Jacobs projects. Adding value. So here you see these covers here. They're out at the monitoring wells. They are old covers, steel, heavy, falling apart, rusted. Our maintenance crew, they got these fabricated covers here that are way lighter. Keep the critters out, make it a lot safer for the town employees to go in there and check on their monitoring reads. We got our drone. So we got our drone, and it's got an IR on it. So we're able to go out and you can see the tanks that we have up here regular, and then you can see with the IR can see the level in the tanks. So with that IR also, we've got manhole covers that have been covered for years and we haven't been able to find. GIS doesn't have them or anything. So with that IR and that drone, we were able to pick up the heat and find all these manholes. So we're continuing that through the year, and any hot spots over the wastewater plant, they can go over and they can see any hot spots that are in there for any equipment that's failing. Scott's going to touch up on this no-des truck, so it's unidirectional flushing. I'll let you go ahead and talk about that when we come up to it, but it's going to save a ton of water and conserve a lot of water for the town. And that's it, short and sweet. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Zamora.
Thank you, Danny. All right, I'm going to jump into the amendment number 4. So Jacobs has been providing services to the town since 1993. Town renewed the 5-year contract that we're currently in with Jacobs back in July of 2020. The contract expires in June of 25, and each year we negotiate scope and compensation. And this year we've added the scope of the Mingus West booster tanks. There's 2 new tanks out there in Mingus if you've headed out there to Mingus Mountain or gone over to Jerome. And we also have a booster station that they're also going to be taking over for operations and maintenance of that. We also negotiated with Jacobs for a 3.86% base fee.
Step just a little closer to the microphone.
Yes, a 3.86% base fee increase. That covers labor, fuel, increased costs that they have been seeing over the last year. And this is a breakdown of the base fees. As you can see, the total of the current contract is 4.4, and with the 3.86% increase, that's about a $170,000 increase for the base fees this year. The next section of the amendment are reimbursable items. These items are basically just pass-throughs, and these are in the contract or in the amendment and in the contract every year. And they are not changing for this year. There's no markups on any of these costs. These are just simply a pass-through. They receive a bill, they send that bill to the town. We did increase magnesium hydroxide from 60,000 to 90,000 for the additional lift station that is going to be coming online in the next fiscal year down at the village. It's the Village Way lift station at Highway 169. The next section of the amendment is the additional services projects. These are projects that we get together annually. We make a list of all the projects, the updates, the upgrades, the items that maybe are no longer supported. We've got some older infrastructure, and we prioritize those. And this is a list of those projects for this next fiscal year. We've got about $1.3 million of water projects and $1.3 million worth of wastewater projects that, if approved, we'll be moving forward on. And I want to back up real quick. I want to highlight the SCADA server upgrade. That's a pretty big ticket item of $400,000 at our wastewater treatment plant. That is to replace the hardware and the software at the wastewater treatment plant. And that computer, that server, is what's actually running the plant. And it's calling out whenever there's alarms to our technicians so that they can respond to any alarms. And the software part of that, we are going to be replacing the software that's been used at that facility for over 20 years. And it has about a $16,000 a year licensing fee that goes along with it. So we're going to be able to eliminate that, switching to a newer software that will also be more user-friendly and be able to be used on smartphones, iPads, and things like that. So that'll do a couple of things, upgrade that system, and then we'll lose that cost every year for the licensing. And then on the water side, we have got the no-des flushing system. We are going to have Jacobs do this flushing program over we would like to do this over the next 2 fiscal years. They would schedule out to do half of the water distribution system. And typically, the way it has been done in the past is, as you can see in the picture on the right, you would just connect a hose to a fire hydrant and you'd flush till it clears. And as you can see, that's a lot of waste. There's a ton of wasted water there. It's running down the street. You're receiving calls. There's a water leak. What's going on? The curbs are running water through them. This new technology that's come out just in the last couple of years, it was used in city of Scottsdale and city of Goodyear, is the truck there. It's the no-des, and it's a no discharge system so that you can connect to the fire hydrant to do your flushing, and there are filters on the truck. You can run the water through the filters. They will monitor the water quality, and then there's a small pump that will pump it right back into the next fire hydrant down the line. So there will be, the only loss you'll see is what's in the hoses when you dump the hoses and you move to the next one. So it's a new innovative technology that's just come out. It aligns with a lot of our goals for conserving water and being a good steward of our water in the town. And we will be the first water system in Yavapai County to use this technology. So just wanted to highlight that. And then the summary. I've got the 3 sections there on that summary, the base fee reimbursables and additional services for a total of $9.5 million. Any questions and
Questions for Mr. King?
comments?
I just have a quick comment on the new SCADA, can we call it an operating system? The
Right.
software. In this time where people can't even hardly go 2 years without getting a new phone, I just want to say that Jacobs employees are saints for working with something that is 20 years old. And I'm seeing some head nods back there. So yeah, we really appreciate the lifespan that you've gotten out of it. And I hope that the new system is fantastic for you. And I'm sure it's worth every penny.
Yes.
So Jacobs owns the new cleaning truck for the fire hydrants.
Yes, Jacobs owns that truck.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jacobs, for that. Thank you for being valuable members of our community. I always see you in the parade. I appreciate that. Always appreciate when you come to council meetings. Keep up the good work. Other questions for Jacobs and/or our fine staff here? Nope. Okay, with that, I will ask for, you're done. Thank you. I will ask for an adjournment. Oh, we don't need to adjourn? We're just done then. Okay, I'm going to hit this. Everybody go home.